The second game of the round of 16 match between Champion Juice and Torgelis Mongoloid versus Atlas Lions is going to be played on Frozen Time Sea of Worms. So that's a Sea of Worms that you know from RTS League, the starting with towers instead of the fortresses, which is much better for a random style gaming. And we are seeing the same players. Oh no, that is actually a switch in Atlas Lions. Zeus is OP, or rather, Zeus is back, or yeah, Zeus is back, I think was the nickname, is going to be replaced by Nulgath from Lat, who is playing Loki. So that's going to be a bit of a switch in the civilizations in here. Otherwise, for the opponents, we are seeing Champion as Oranos, still Vulki as Zeus, switching from Loki, and Lion, or rather Omega X Blast, is sticking with the Zeus. And for the opponents, Lion Roar sticking with Hades, Nulgat is then Loki, and Flash, who is also replacing. Who is he actually replacing? Right now, I don't remember. Doesn't really matter all that much, but he is going to be playing as a Thor. So, I'm Smoke. That was the player in the first game. He's replacing him. That's going to be a bit of a different lineup. And let's see what we are going to be seeing in the Sea of Worms. Yeah, right now starting with looking at Omega X Blast, who is being spawned at the very back. So basically in the safest position overall. And well, his TC only in water range is going to be the one on the left. Basically the same as the one at the top from Lion Roar. So these are going to be in water range. And we are seeing that this one possibly as well in the Mythical Age. I'm thinking that it might be in range. And how about this one? This seems to be too far. Yeah, this will be too far. So 2 TCs for the Champion Juice in water range. And definitely they will be forced to win the water and go for it a bit more than they did on the Midgard in the first game. Yeah, not ideal, but of course you don't really know. But in the end, it's not all that tragic. Could have been better, but it's not really all that bad. And looking at the position of the dog or his ally, they are probably going to be stealing those fishes from each other. So I'm not exactly sure why he went for the dog in this position, why he didn't just go all the way in here. Yeah, this is not really ideal how it should be done. Basically, second dog could have been about here, but the first one should have went about this position. This is not ideal for the team play at all. But looking at the other placements in here, a small champion is going for a placement at basically the same position. You can see that the players are right now going to be in a pretty tricky position, as Flash is choosing his dog basically behind enemy lines. Is of course not going to be ideal for him, and I'm fully expecting that he will be not having all that much luck fighting for the water, and he will be relying on his teammates quite a lot, and let's see if they will be able to help. They are kind of a bit farther, but this dog is definitely a plan from more champion, as it's in a pretty tricky position, and I'm fairly certain that he knew about the dog in here. Let's check about it. He knew. Yeah, he definitely did. He most definitely did. And we are having also a bit of fighting right next to Skrailen in here from the red player. And of course the Oracle from More Champion, who seems to be quite aggressive in this gameplay so far. And it's looking that he's definitely going to be aiming to make life for the tier player quite difficult. And Wookie is definitely confirming that. So that's definitely a plan. And Flash is in for a very interesting game indeed. Otherwise, in the home bases, there's not much interesting to be seen on Sea of Worms, as it's basically a reliably spawning map with the berries, chickens and such, and pretty decent gold right now for Vulki, as we are going to be checking for more champion who is already using the boar, so slightly better economy, as of course gathering from the hunt is going to be faster. Also gold right next to the tower, and in the pocket it doesn't really matter where the gold is, but it's quite close by as well. And we are going to be switching for the opponents, and the first is for example going to be Flash, who is using the starting gold from the Thor, of course, for a bit faster gathering, and is right now trying to make sure that this gold is going to be as safe as possible through building the temple in a pretty good position right next to the tower. You should be kinda expecting advances into the next ages as we are dropping a temple, as we are looking at Lion Roar. Right now Nulgath should probably be building a temple as well, as he's going with Skrailen inside his own base. Dropping a temple in the safety of his home base, but we are also seeing that champion, exactly as we were expecting, is going for very aggressive build-up, and I'm kinda curious if his teammates are going to be joining him in such an aggression, but I will be thinking that it will be so. Not maybe Omega X Blast, I'm kinda thinking that Omega X Blast is going to be tasked with actually fighting for the water fully, whereas the other allies are going to be much more interested in basically land warfare, as we are not seeing any second dock so far being built. The oracles right now trying to be huddled next to the house, so that they are not killed for Valorin, I'm thinking. Probably going to be aiming to kill the dogs or some such, not exactly sure so far, but we are also seeing that blue is right now already scouting how's it looking with the opponent's dogs, and if somebody is going for a second, like for example yellow, and if the fight for the water is going to be real or not. So second dog also for Omega X Blast, as was expected, and it's looking like that for Wookiee as well. The only one so far who isn't going for water is More Champion, and it's almost looking like that he actually won't be going for it, because switching into his point of view, he does definitely have enough wood line, or rather enough wood for second dog, but he seems to be, I was almost going to say waiting for the classical age for normal military buildings, but he's not, and he's going for the dog right now, which is going to be a bit too late, as of course he could be building for it a bit sooner, as he's already in the classical age, but he needs to wait for it. Yeah, right now built. Yeah, you can see the second pyramid definitely could have been made slightly sooner, so this was not ideally played by More Champion in here. Could have been slightly more optimal, but I don't really think it's going to matter in the long run. Oh, let's keep on the fog of war, but switch into the observer point of view, so that we have all the 6 players point of view actually shown, and we are seeing that Wookiee is already abusing the fishing boats of flesh, and it seems like that they will be having the upper hand, as the advances into the next age are not really all that fast, or rather were not all that fast from lots in here, and they will definitely be forced to hope for the best, as they are attempting to finish second docks, both flesh and Nulgath in here, and so that means that they will still fight for the water in full. We have seen at the God Powers that actually Wookiee is having restoration, whereas Omega X Blast is having ceasefire, which I think makes pretty good sense on this map, as not only do they so crucially need to win the water, but ceasefire is of course pretty powerful in here, especially in combination with Underworld Passage to steal the back TCs or even the TCs right next to the water because of the line of sight from potentially water in here from boats and such. And the ceasefire then for the steal is of course always pretty important. So goodbye troll from Wookiee. Not a bad idea, as of course those Hersirs are rather a bit of a problem, especially combined with the troll. But without him, and as the Thor, yeah, it's not really going to be making all that much of a difference right now for More Champion. And if he's going to be putting up the military barracks as fast as he is, he should be pretty much fine with a few more mills to defend against that. Even with just the oracles, it's going to be pretty much fine for him. Moving back to the water, as we are seeing that the number of boats is growing, especially for Wookiee. And we are also seeing that Purple is right now switching from basically not fighting in the left, but switching to the left, and he's basically making sure that Lion Roar is not going to be engaging in some good spot for restoration on the right side, as it seems like, quite convincingly, that More Champions team is having pretty strong upper hand in here, even though it's still not going to be all that easy, as those 4 docks are going to be a pretty big problem, but for them to be a problem, they actually need boats in them. So that's something that's not happening, and even though this is nice, it could definitely be a whole lot stronger if they did deposit at least the one fishing boat in those, so that they will be shooting. Well, could have been a bit more optimal play by them. In the meantime, of course, Pegasi, definitely great idea by Omega X Blast in any water battle, as they are both tanking quite a lot of damage, and much more importantly, they are very annoying to play against, as you need to babysit your boats all that much more, and that's of course not ideal, especially since you are forced to quite a lot of micro already, and might be even forced to go for a bit of defense on the land, as exactly there is already classical age battle happening between More Champion and Lad Flash. So even though we expected that maybe More Champion could be the one applying the early pressure, he isn't. He isn't, and it's on the other hand Flash trying to basically do the same, and that's very nicely played, as he's already killing a villager and basically stopping a tree line from working for more, which is pretty dangerous at this stage, because of course, even though right now restoration is being cast on both sides, fortunately not really all that ideal for Lion Roar, as he was casting it just on himself, whereas it was a lot effective for Wookiee, together with Omega X Blast. I'm going to return to my point, as More Champion is right now not going to be able to supply any boats because of the disruption on the land. Yeah, and that's potentially some kind of idea or rather opportunity for Absolats to come back into the game, or rather Atlas Lions. Well, they are all from Absolats, so why not? As they could be having the advantage in numbers if they play things correctly, but they so far don't seem to be doing so. As Nulgat is right now being caught in a pretty tough spot, fighting against both Wulki and More Champion, and yep, that's not really ideal at all. And the Champion Jews have actually been able to do exactly what you need to do on water and what you are aiming for, and that's divide opponents' armies. And once you are able to achieve that and basically switch battles from like 2v2 into 2v1 times 2, you are basically halfway into victory, as it's very hard to come back once you are losing a bulk of your army. Lion Roar right now going for a bit of radiant, so it's basically looking like that Atlas Lions are going to be giving up on the water, as they are just going for economy radiant, which will easily allow Champion Jews to win the water without all that much of a trouble. We are of course going to be switching onto the land fully right now, as Wulki is building Archer Range, a military academy in Blue's base, and going to be hoping that he can help him defend altogether, because still the teal player is doing a pretty good job against him and keeping him at bay quite nicely. But he needs to be careful about the Kero Ballistae, because of course, especially right now with the tower, they're going to be quite dangerous. Red though is right now rebuilding right next to front EC of... Is it actually his front EC? No, it isn't. It almost looks like that it's actually Flash's, because I'm thinking that this at the bottom is Champions. Looking at the minimap, it almost looks like that it's actually the case. And this TC was also Morse. So that's actually stolen by his teammate Wulki. Yeah, not exactly sure that Morse is going to be all that happy about that. And is that actually a dead villager? Yes, that's definitely a dead citizen. And how did that happen? Probably by the troll. Kinda interesting. So it seems like that actually Champion somehow misplayed in there. Well, that's the second citizen already dead. And we are seeing the second DC, or rather that's already third. Oh, well, that's a bit of a surprise by Nulgath. It's taking a 30 C, Lion Roar is already at 2 as well, Wulki is at 2, and we are seeing second and third being captured at basically the same time for Omega X Blast, so we could be waiting right now for a pretty strong boom from the purple player, and since he's the one at the back, he's probably going to be quite strong, and since he's also Zeus, yeah, that's one to fear, quite definitely. So the army seems to be moving right now forward on the land, as we see on the water that is basically decided. See all the green boats and basically the docks of the opponents getting killed all across the shoreline, but the Lion Roar is still not giving up, and he's basically trying to make sure that his opponents are still forced to fight in here, and that's not a bad idea, because since he is at the very back, he should be having pretty decent economy to both fight for the water and boom from TCs into more villages and such, so it should be pretty much fine. But you also mustn't forget that Pegasi are basically just waiting for advancing to the next age. Let's check if Apollon is already coming up somewhere. So far not. Omega X he doesn't have the resources yet, but he should be having them pretty soon. He's going to be just waiting to cast the Underworld Passage, go for the TC, of course, take it for himself as soon as possible. In the meantime though, they need to really be quite careful on the land, but as it's turning into a pretty difficult situation, especially since Nulgath with Flash seem to be cooperating all that great. Aspor is going for the TC. And the number of Kero Ballistae is pretty problematic, as of course Flash is having just a lot of infantry and not really enough of raiding cavalry, even though he is Thor. So I'm kind of thinking that this TC should be coming up without any kind of problem, and it's just going to be waiting for the correct moment and potentially for next ages, as the upgrades are there. It's medium Roman X-Men and Warborn armor coming up, so we are expecting that Flash could be advancing into Heroic Age in a reasonable time, but let's not be hasty, because you can see he's absolutely out of food. Like, absolutely totally, and that's not good, because that basically means that he hasn't been able to switch his economy around yet, and he's probably basically forgotten about it. Most definitely. You can see how many villages he's still having on wood and on gold at this stage, and that's basically useless if he's out of any kind of food, and he's having just literally 9 villages on food. yeah, let's say 10, of course, but he's not really gathering yet. And that's basically just a disaster waiting to happen, because his opponents are much better off, also through the water economy. And that's just going to be shown quite soon. Right now you can see that Nulgath is joining into the battle through the bottom, so that should be basically a moment where Flash is going to be engaging in the battle as well, as Champion is picking basically absolutely horrible spot to fight. Not really sure why he's fighting here at all. Against like a double army from the very start, so it was definitely a weird idea, but since Red is now forced into a bit of a defensive, as he was definitely not having enough army against Zeus, or is it Hades actually? Yeah, it's Zeus. He is at least able to stop. Oh, come on, shoot, shoot, shoot. Oh, throwing Axeman, that could have been killed. It's a bit of a shame, but I'm kind of thinking that this villager will die pretty soon anyway, so he's just waiting for the cave and could be building it already for himself. A lot of villages coming for the gold, and that's kind of interesting position, because there is still a gold at the very back. Right next to the yellow Catastropos that is waiting for Underworld Passage, and we are also seeing that already landing has happened, not through Underworld Passage, but through the boat, and of course with all those towers and the military academy and archer range, there's like limited way that actually the yellow player could be taking the TC for himself, and that's a bit unfortunate, because you should be counting with this, and you should be taking care, or rather making sure that you have at least some building or anything right next to it to make sure that it's not taken from you by surprise. Let Flash going for second TC himself. So that's 3-3. Lion Roar is at 3 already. Even though one is going to be stolen, so yep, yet again. We are seeing a TC stolen, so it's basically on both sides basically the same. It's going to be of course captured for him. Medium Raiders already, and are we going to be seeing next age from somebody on either team? So far doesn't seem so. From the two Norse. And from the Zeus, nothing yet, and you can see that he's basically also not having any kind of food economy, so he's of course not going to be advancing into the next age anytime soon either, and he is joining on the front line, so it's going to be turning into full 3v3 pretty soon it seems like, even though it might not, because Omega X Blast seems to be quite intent on actually fighting on the left, and surprise for the Lion Roar, and we still of course have the ceasefire if Omega X Blast needs it, and well, I'm fairly certain that it's not going to be needing it at all, especially since the Toxots are already coming out of the archer ranges. So bad news, and actually pretty terrible news, as even though you still do have enough resources, or rather enough TCs, your teammate is going to be missing one, whereas Omega X Blast, which just now through Apollo, is going to be having 4, and he seems to be quite nicely ready for jumping into the Mythic Age as well. Mine, and are we seeing from Omega X Blast enough resources? Not really yet, but it shouldn't be all that much of a problem, because of course he's not fighting anywhere all that much. So a few units in there, that's not really anything crucial. With the Centaur and Hero are waiting right next to the battlefield at the right side of the map. And it's almost looking like that so far Vulki is quite belligerent, and together with more champion they might be having enough army actually here to at least clean up on the right side, which is something that they could do, because if they kill all those long houses they might be actually catching Flash unawares, as I don't think he has all that many backups. There's literally just one at the back, and he hasn't actually rebuilt somewhere else. So yeah, that's something he should be careful about, and potentially could be costing him even the game. Because if he loses those military buildings in basically just one quick attack, he's going to be in a pretty tough situation to rebuild. And once he loses the army, yeah, you can kind of guess what's going to happen. Our champion paying enough attention, as there's a bit of raiding going to be happening by Flash, as it seems like that neither team is comfortable with going into the attack. But that's not really true for Omega X Blast on the left, who is at 4 TCs comfortably, and Vulki as well. And they are right now arriving, or rather, the purple player is arriving in their opponent's base. That's of course going to be pretty tough for the yellow player to defend, as you can see, all the units are being sent from the front build, as he doesn't have anything in the base, and unfortunately doesn't seem to be building all that fast. Yeah, building with one villager is not going to cut it. Those two are going to be much better. But I don't really think that he should be building about here. He should be building a bit more to the safety, because quite frankly this TC is kinda half toast. if Purple plays this correctly, especially since he does have the Fortress and the Petroboli, and with the towers coming up, yep, this is not such a great situation, and we are seeing that the Lightning Storm is being cast into offensive on the right flank, and this is of course going to mean a pretty horrible disaster for the red player, as Nuga is losing basically a whole army, one short and a few of those. Yeah, basically just those two throwing axemen, literally those two throwing axemen, survive the Lightning Storm, and that's absolutely horrible. That's absolutely horrendous at this stage, because of course all the army from green is going to be coming in full into the attack, and with all the Gator Ballistae basically killing everything that is coming out of the longhouses. That's pretty tough deal, and let's see if Blood Flash is going to be able to help with the defense in there. So far not doing all that much. Probably going to be waiting to run through the back into the Gator Ballistae. It's not a bad idea. Whereas in the front he has finished with interesting towers, but more champion is also going for a bit of towers into the front and eyeing the gold. Yep, he's definitely eyeing the gold for himself and will be attempting to breach the walls pretty soon. In the meantime, even though Lightning Storm did its damage, it didn't really win the battle all that convincingly, because unfortunately for the champion Jews, they don't really have all that many siege weapons to actually go through, and this is quite interesting underworld passage, as it's probably gonna go into the middle. I was expecting that maybe on the left, where we have seen that the BD is being cast as the Aphrodite got power from Lion Roar, who is just now losing a TC. And yet another Lightning Storm at the bottom, so well, that's actually a pretty great idea, because of his huge range. It's going to be costing not only Nulgat at least a few units, it's not really all that deadly for him yet, it's going to be costing Flash his whole army, and we are seeing that this is not really great for him, as even though it has forced at least a few units back from the underworld passage in the middle of the bases, still villages are coming through for the fortress, and right now, with the threat basically being eliminated, we are seeing that those dudes are gonna be killing, much more importantly than the TC, the whole economy of Nulgath. You can see that's basically his whole food economy. This is just basically a flank economy, and well, you can see that Nidhogg is doing what he can, but unfortunately it's not going to be enough, as Odysseus is here, and a lot of heavy toxols already, with not really enough upgrades. They are dealing damage one by one to the dragon, going to be plummeting right into the underworld, like literally right into the underworld passage, so he's not going to be having it far. Keep the Hades in there. So we'll also join into the fun. The most important fight is going to be happening in here, and I'm kind of curious if Green is going to be trying to sneak some villages about here, where there is darkness and absolutely no line of sight for Atlas Lions. But in the meantime, let's check on the right, where actually Flash is doing a pretty good job breaching through the wall on the right and through the towers. I'm going to be attempting to take down the TC, which could be a pretty great idea, because we are seeing that Mod Champion is still at 2 TCs, of course, because his teammates basically stole one from him. And he is going to be attempting Mythical Age, but he doesn't seem to be having enough food, unless he's advancing already. No, he already is, through Hecate. And unfortunately, they just lost the sight on here, and we are seeing that Underworld is going to be cast somewhere else yet again, and it's coming from here into where? Where is actually the other side? As we are seeing the Flash, or other Flash going for the DC, and it should be coming down with a bit of luck. But where is actually the Underworld passage? I don't really see it all that much. Going to be seen, I think, pretty soon, once the units from Purple arrive somewhere in the battlefield on the right. I'll be expecting that it's somewhere in there, but in the meantime, he's taken the TC for himself without, well, without all that many problems. He does have problems, as a pretty good opposition by Lion Roar, but still, we are still having the ceasefire, but he doesn't want to use it, and for very good reason, because there are double flame weapons still to play, especially with the Ragnarok power. And that's of course something that will be a pretty big threat right about now. So Flash coming into Ragnarok, Mythical Age from Lion Roar coming up as well. And actually this could be making a whole lot of difference, because if he casts it somewhere around here, this would be a pretty sweet spot for Earthquake. He would be killing not only the towers and the palaces. Oh, this was a spot for Earthquake, most definitely. this was a waste. This was definitely a waste, because he killed like 2 military buildings. Alright, 3. 3 military buildings, a few towers, and underworld passage. Whereas here, he will be absolutely crippling the blue player. He will be killing all his military buildings, and basically the defensive setup that is important in this battlefield, and he would be helping his teammates so much. Well, that's a bit of a shame, I'm thinking. And this could have definitely went slightly better for Atlas Lions, and they might have rather communicated slightly better for that. In the meantime, important stuff is that this TC is not in Absolute's power, so Flash is just one TC, and even though he's doing what he can, for sure right now with the Ragnarok, of course, he's going for a bit of fun for the TCs. Does he have enough? Doesn't. He doesn't have wood. He needs his teammates to send it to him, if they have it. Ah, we can see Nulgath. Oh my, so many resources. So many resources. He isn't housed. Does he have at least full upgrades yet? Oh, what? Come on, Nulgath. That could be so much better. He's having just copper shields with those resources. Ah. That's just a huge shame for his team. But at any rate, we have seen the flaming weapons, which will turn into ceasefire, I'm thinking. I'm just hoping that Nulgath is not going to be falling for it. So that's that, and yes, should have been just waiting for it. That's a bit of a shame, because Flash definitely should have expected that. That was just inevitable. Once he cast flaming weapons over on Ragnarok, what's going to come, and he should have been stealing the TC from his opponent, and that would have been something that would help them quite strongly. You can see that it's going to be used, of course, for stealing TC from Lionroar as well. And that they at least could have basically equaled the game in there. On the water, in the meantime, we are having a time to check around. There's not much happening, just wasted population, of course. Everybody forgetting about carcinosis. Yeah. And a boat, a random boat in here, but this is just pure gold. And just useless, of course, because we are playing on Conquest, and it's not going to be making any kind of difference in the gameplay. But right now, flaming weapons go off, but it also means that the red player is going to be having easy time once he finishes. Once he finishes with actually his flaming weapons. He still does have them. Now are his upgrades. Still just baseline as well. So that's also the reason why they are having problems with their opponents, and it's not like it's better on the other side actually. Well, what the hell? We are at 25 minutes and More Champion is having just bronze weapons and just medium archive. Well, that's also the reason why he isn't winning all that convincingly. He's having at least heavy destroyers. But of course, with such missing upgrades, it's kind of interesting battle from all of them. Of course, TC is gonna come down. Yet again, the same that we have seen in the first game from More Champion. He's researching in the TC that is actually under fire, but it seems like that he didn't really have a choice. So yeah, that probably wasn't a mistake. It was just a necessity, as he has lost the second TC as well, and he's at 0. He's at 0 TCs right now, which means that he is out of any population limit at all, and it's almost looking like that he actually was attempting to make a GG in here, but a bit too early, don't you think? Since you are at 0 TCs right now. Well, even though he's of course gonna rebuild, as Vulki is going to be helping him back on his feet with heavy swords, bronze mail, iron weapons, and copper shields. And infantry is even champion, so that's much better. At the top, we are seeing that actually Lionroar is doing such a great job against the purple player. You can see just 2 TCs against 4, but he is keeping him at bay absolutely brutally, even though Omega X Blast is having full upgrades. And champion heavy guns. And champion toxels as well. Or rather, just heavy. It looks like champions, but they were just heavy. This is a really pretty great feat. And the Helipo are a pretty great idea, as they are super tanky. Let's see the upgrades. Medium tox swords, just copper shields, but that's kinda understandable, because he is the one who's quite heavily hammered by Omega X Blast, but still. So far, a quite nice game, and quite nicely played, so quite nicely played indeed. In the defense, against so many town centers, by the Atlas Lions. At the top, there was of course a bit of walling going on, as that was during the ceasefire, I'm thinking, basically to, I don't know what. That was more, probably. Probably MOR. Yes, that was a bit of a wall art happening in the game. But unfortunately, it seems like that the game is heading into the last moments as the pressure from Atlas Lions is basically waning, and they are the ones that are getting pushed back as More Champion is finally having some kind of economy for Hero Archive at least. I'm not really interested in the upgrades quite apparently, and he seems to be moving ever forward with Wookie. And in the front, the denied TC is also quite important, as of course the Hades against the Zeus with full upgrades is not a good deal. And you can see right now the Atlas Alliance resigning after a pretty nice game indeed. And Champion Jews are advancing, of course, into the quarterfinals, 2-0 in here. That was actually a pretty good match, and the second game especially, that was very nice fun, with quite unusual plays. And really pretty good defense by Lionroar against the two TCs, and in the front, very good attempts that almost succeeded against More Champion and Wookie, but Wookie was in the correct places, and he knew what to do with the 4 TCs for himself. Well, nicely played, so let's check the post game. Wookie, yeah, I agree with that. He was playing nicely, even though he stole the TC from More Champion, which I think contributed to actually why More was having such problems with getting the upgrades and such. That definitely doesn't help if your teammate steals your back TC. Very good game for you then. Oh, so many resources distributed from Wookie. And I'm fairly certain that's into More. Because why send it to Omega X Blast? Because Omega X Blast wasn't having any kind of problems to boom. So yeah, it wouldn't make any sense. That was definitely into him. And Nulgath also sent in a bit, and that's how we may be thinking it to Lionroar to help him in the fight at the back. That was a bit surprising for him, of course. Fortunately, Lad Flash wasn't able to get up strong economy, even though he still was pretty decent. But Ragnarok with just 49 civilians, yep, that's also the reason why it wasn't all that game changing, even though it still did pretty decent damage to your opponents. Let's not say that it didn't. Well, GG.